Much, Master Control. We have St. Augustine MP and UNC Shadow Minister of Local Government, Ms. Khadija Ameen. Pleasant good evening, ma'am. It's a pleasure having you on as always.
Good evening, Mikee K, and good evening to all your listeners.
All right. Now, there's talk on the ground, and I know when there's talk on the ground, you have to be careful exactly what the information is and the source of the information. But it seems as though in the month of May, Dr. Rowley is expected to open up nominations for the local government election. And of course, the local government election was postponed for 1 year for an extra to enable government to roll out the reform package. Question, where are we currently with the new reforms?
Mikee K, the reform it's a hoax to postpone the election. Because local government reform is a continuous process. The bill that they claim they postponed election for came to the House since I was in the Senate. It went to a joint select committee. They saved the work of the committee. They bring it back. And so that has been going on for some years. Calling the election does not hinder the reform process. You will have councillors. If you have an election, you change councillors, but the structure remains so that the reform can continue. What I think happened is that the PNM really are feeling the pulse on the ground in that the public is against them. The population is unhappy with them, and they're ready to knock them off. Right? They're ready to vote them out. And so they use that as an excuse. They do local government reform to postpone the election. Now we have a few months into the additional year that they have put. And what we are seeing is the PNM lining up themselves to do work that they failed to do for the past few years. So they have $100 million that they give to the special purpose company to pave roads. They paved no roads 6 months after they gave the company another $100 million. So they are now up to $200 million. They did nothing. So from the budget to present, a couple of weeks ago, we saw that they moved that special purpose company from the Ministry of Local Government to the Ministry of Rohan Sinanan. And again, we have not seen a single road paved. So while taxpayers' dollars jumping up, we are seeing very little done. They also brought another minor piece of legislation to change the name of the borough to the borough of Siparia and the borough of Diego Martin. So from Diego Martin Regional Corporation, it is now Diego Martin Borough Corporation. Same thing for Siparia. Siparia Regional Corporation is now renamed Siparia Borough Corporation. And all it does is change the name of the entity. It does not give them more powers. It does not change the development focus of the area to say, okay, this is our budget. This is a borough, and we are going to focus on developing this area for local economic development. We are going to focus this area on education institutions and the facilities that will support it. We are going to build up this area around culture and all the amenities that are needed, where you will have revenue being generated. You will have a development in a certain direction. There is nothing like that, just a simple name change. That is not reform. I was really happy when I thought they were going to have 2 new boroughs. I was the chairman of Tunapuna Piako. That has a population of over 200,000 people. And I thought that Tunapuna Town Center could have become a borough, just as Arima Town Center is a borough. So you have had numerous, all these little superficial changes that really is not development.
Yeah, but in the midst of all of that, if it's just a matter of verbal acrobats or semantics, what does that do for the people of this country? Because we're still talking about efficient garbage collection, maintenance of recreational grounds. Citizens are still being told that their property doesn't exist on the regional corporation map. And also equitable funding across the board for all regional corporations. Now, are any of these things addressed as far as part of this reform package?
No, none of those things are addressed. In fact, what the reform does is it speaks in terms of property taxes. It goes. In fact, part of the a big part of that local government reform has to do with property tax, and so the opposition did not support the bill to bring reform, because we are not in support of bringing local government, of bringing property tax to the country right now. But it does not improve the conditions. So citizens, it does not make your roads better. It does not make them more efficient at cleaning, filling the potholes or picking up the garbage. It does not make them better at maintaining the parks and recreation facilities. So we are still at square one.
Yeah.
Understand?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so our take is that regional corporations have to be adequately funded. We have corporations where you have very small populations. So, for instance, in Arima Borough, an electoral district might be about 3,000, 4,000 Burgesses residents. In Tunapuna, Piako, and Couva, it is up to 10,000 per councillor. So the volume of work for a councillor is not equal. The number of votes you have to get to win is also significantly higher in some areas. And we are saying it must be equitable, as well as equitable financing. When you have a huge area getting less, in fact, so I'll use Shoguana's borough is a borough. They have about 60 to 80,000 persons, but Point Fortin borough has 17,000 persons living. So more than twice, in fact, about 3 times the population Shoguana's is, and the Shoguana's actually gets less funding than Point Fortin borough. What is the maths that you're using to give taxpayers dollars to these regional corporations? When Couva Tabakeet is getting about $1 a day per Burgess, and you have another regional corporation getting about $9 a day per Burgess, per resident, average, to perform all the services, collecting garbage, fixing your cesspit, fixing the roads, potholes, parks, playgrounds, all these things, you have an inequity. That is why in Couva you still have wooden bridges that are falling down, dilapidated, and in other areas you have funds going back.
Yeah, and one would think that the time that they have taken to postpone this, it would address many of these issues. This thing about your property not being on the regional corporation map, many people have complained about that. They want work done, but how do you get that rectified?
Yeah, well, they tell you that your street is not on the corporation. The street is not vested in the corporation, right?
Right.
Now, these vesting orders are, in some cases, more than 20 years old. So the vesting order is really where the corporation legally adopts a roadway. And we have had instances where new roadways were adopted by the corporation. So I'll give you an example. Tunapuna Piako, when HCL and Clico went under and the government stepped in and so on, the HCL properties surrounding Trinity Mall, those roads became government roads, and the Tunapuna Regional Corporation had to adopt that road, the roads in that area, and now they are maintained by the regional corporation. So anytime you have potholes and so on, the corporation has to fix it, garbage collection and so on. So that is an example of a recent development that has been handed over to the regional corporation. There are some HDC developments, for example, that have also been handed over to the regional corporation. But there are a lot of developments that have not been handed over. However, even those that are handed over, the government does not give additional funding to maintain those areas. So you have so much development taking place in the last 20, 40 years. And some of those roads have been adopted by the regional corporation. And no additional funds is being given to maintain those roads. But you also have a lot of roads that develop on their own, organic development. So let's take Kelly Village in Tunapuna Piako region. Kelly Village would have started out with tracks and traces coming off the Caroni South Bank Road. And those have developed into full proper roadway. But there has been no adopting of those roads in any formal sense. So most of them are not in the vesting order. Eventually, the corporation does go in based on the request of the council to pick up garbage, to pave the roads and so on, and they may put up a sign. But if you are to do a proper inventory of the road, you end up with local government roads, highways, which is that fall under the Ministry of Works, and you have a lot of what you call orphaned roads. So it does not give the regional corporation a true reflection of the roads that they do maintain, because they do step in roads where they are not legally vested. So again, all of these are things that do not require new law. It does not require regional reform. It does not require local government reform for you to adopt the roads, for you to recognize the roads, for HDC to hand over the development. When Oropun Boulevard is looking like the Bocas, and we're fighting to get the regional corporation to pave it, it is still under HDC. You think residents want to hear who the road is vested in? They want their potholes fixed. They want their roads in good condition. Yeah. And that is the level of efficiency we have to aspire for. And reform, changing the law does not fix that. It takes political will. And I think the PNM does not have the political will when it comes to empowering local government. And that is why they don't care for local government until there is an election due. And because an election is coming up, you will see them paving over mud. They're paving left, right, and center. But in between, there is no care and concern for local government at all.
But let me ask you, I'm putting you on a spot here. Is the United National Congress ready for that local government election bill, if it's wrong?
The UNC was ready for the election when it was due, which was in December of 2022. We are ready, and we have been working. In fact, we completed our nomination process, and we were about to schedule the screening when this announcement was made. So we are well advanced in terms of preparation, and we continue to prepare. What I have observed is that there are some areas where the UNC has made a lot of inroads, so that there are UNC seats that there are PNM seats, areas that are held by the PM now, that the UNC very well will win in the next local government election.
Right.
There are regional corporations that are held by the PNM that the UNC could win in the next local government election. And I think that is why the PNM is running scared. That is why they call back on the election, because they realize they have not performed. The public thinks badly of them, and they're trying to go in now to do some last-minute campaigning with taxpayers' dollars. That is what they are doing.
I understand. Let me just shift gears quickly before we close off. You did, of course, address the issue of an increase in school violence and the impact on society, but most of all, you highlighted girls in particular being at high risk.
Yes. Yeah, Mikee K, let me tell you, as a parent, I am really concerned with the violence that is taking place in schools. But you know, what I am seeing is, while we see viral videos of school fights, every time you hear a statement from the ministry, they are telling us that school violence is on the decline. More than once in the newspapers, they reported the minister saying that, you know, we now have police in uniform, armed police in schools, and therefore that will reduce the violence. We are putting a plaster on a store instead of addressing the underlying issues where girls are fighting and what are the underlying causes. I can tell you that the guidance counselors and social workers in the schools are tremendously understaffed. You have huge, big schools with big population, sharing guidance officers, so they really cannot address the issues. And it is not to deal with a student after they become violent. There are red flags and pointers that you know, psychologists and social workers use to indicate that there might be trouble in a home. So if a child is coming to school late, if a child is unkept, come to school in an untidy manner, there are interventions that could be made very early up before the violence emerges. When a student is exposed to violence, sometimes we have so many murders happening. Yeah. It might be a relative, or they may have just seen a murder or some sort of violence taking place in their community. And counseling is required. When a child parent dies, you know, what type of intervention and support is provided to the family and to the child? You have so many victims of crime that do not receive victim support services from the outside of the school, but it should happen in the school. You have a lot of children who learn different differently, and therefore they do not cope with the normal classroom, and you find that they may show violent tendencies because they are not coping well. How are we identifying children with different learning abilities? That kind of thing.
And you're right, and these are things that should be, that assessment should be made. The mere fact that I also had the Shadow Minister of Education, Anita Haynes, and she weighed in on this and said, listen, there's been no follow-up program to find out where these children are, and you can't just simply label them as falling through the cracks and forgetting about it. This is human index. These are the young generation, the future of our country. So very sad indeed. Closing comments, go right ahead, because I know you have a hectic evening. Go ahead.
Yeah, the issue with our school children will affect us for generations to come. Children are dropping out of school because their parents literally cannot afford to pay passage for them to give them food to support them financially, or they are dropping out to support the home financially. We have a lot of things happening in our society where the government is failing to give social support, and there are people falling through the cracks, and we can't just dismiss these things. I am concerned about what will happen in terms of the next generation, when education and opportunities and technical and vocational training is falling down, and we have a next generation to take care of. I am concerned that democracy is being suppressed because a local government election has been postponed. And I'm also very concerned about crime and violence. Up to this evening, there was a double murder in St. Augustine constituency. A 21-year-old, a 16-year-old pregnant young lady, and another person was injured and taken to hospital. And this is following 2 recent murders again. And we have so much gun violence, so much criminal activity, and the government just doesn't seem to be able to get a handle on it.
It seems like nothing is happening. I want to thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure. Keep up the good work, you and your team, and we'll be checking in with you periodically.